Hi there everyone, this is Mac. Before I begin, I'd just like to thank you for taking some time out of your day to go ahead and click on the video. I wanted to make this overview as this was the vehicle that really started my appreciation for originality and my pursuit of preservation. This is my 1991 Ford Mustang with the 5-liter motor. This is an LX convertible. The other body style was a GT, and how you can tell the two apart is that the LXs have a much more tapered in lower rocker panel area, whereas the GTs had a kind of almost squared body-clad lower half molding that wrapped around the entirety of the vehicle. This is, being a Fox body, this was the longest running body style of the Mustang within its history. It ran from 1979 all the way up until 1993, and there was a slight change in the design styling from 86 to 87. The 86 and earlier cars are called the 4i, given that it has 4 square front headlights. These later 87 through 93 cars are called the Arrows, with this rounded off front fascia and this molded in side reflector light. I have heard people say that the 87 through 93 cars, and the 86 as well, because 86 was the first year for the electronic fuel injection, are the more sought after. But this was my car in high school, and I daily drove it for about 4 years, and I'm thankful enough now that I have the ability to store it as I'm working and driving my truck more often. So this is in the garage on a battery charger with a cover. Again, my goal is the same as my truck, whereas I'm trying to keep it all original, or as close to original as I can. Any piece that I have had to fix, replace, or redo on this, I've gone back to a factory style or almost OEM appearing part. And so this is the original paint. This is Oxford white, and the interior is titanium cloth and vinyl. Given that it's a convertible, it's not the most sought after of the body styles, and it's also the heaviest, given that without the added rigidity for a metal roof, they have to stiffen the frame on the lower end. So it is the heaviest of any of the body styles. Doesn't mean that it was not also subject to twisting and flexing, given that the vehicle with the 5-liter motor was rated at 225 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque, which was not bad. So I understand that the body style before, appearance-wise, was somewhat lackluster. It was the Mustang II that ran from 74 all the way up until 1978. And coincidentally enough, individually, by each year, the Fox body Mustang did never do better in terms of sales and production numbers than the Mustang II, despite it being a shadow of its former muscle car high performance from the mid-60s and early 70s. '91 was the last year for this lower black body mold side trim. 92 and 93 it would become body color. These, I've heard people call them phone dial, which I find kind of funny. The website has it listed as 10-hole, but these style rims are the originals that were with the vehicle when new. These are not the original rims. When I got the car, it had the 5-spoke pony wheels on them, and I ended up finding some documentation that said that it had these when it was bought new at the dealership. This is not an Arizona vehicle. This vehicle was actually sold through Theodore Robbins Ford in Costa Mesa, California, which is a dealership that is very, very close to Newport Beach. But given the condition of the vehicle, I would imagine that it was probably bought and didn't spend a whole lot of time out in California, and I believe it's been here most of its life. The people that I bought it from drove it for a little while and ended up parking it, and it was used as a storage shelf in the garage for, I think, just a little over 5 years. So unfortunately there were boxes and things piled on top of it, and given that although it's hidden very well with this Oxford white paint, there is a noticeable amount of dings and dents in it if you pull it out into the sunlight. I have the garage door closed just given the fact that I want to not have any interruptions and noise with other neighbors going about. You also have this cargo rack in the back that was standard with the convertible, at least from this year. I know that the earlier convertibles prior 1986, I believe, did not have this. And I think they just did it as an appearance. I understand that '86 was the first year that third brake lights were mandated. And so a lot of times with the hardtops, there was almost a little reversed periscope looking box that housed the third brake light, but because it's a convertible, they couldn't format that to have the third brake light there. So it's ended up in this little spoiler in the back. I did end up putting an exhaust on it, as was common for the day. These are Flowmaster Super 40 mufflers with dual exhaust in the back, and I believe it's an X pipe. The interior is pretty much all original. Again, the biggest grievance I understand for most people with how they are with these Fox Body Mustangs is that it's not a 5-speed. It is not the Tremec 5-speed. It is the AOD, automatic transmission. But my truck is a 4-speed, and so in order to move about, it is nice every once in a while to get into this and just to be able to put it into gear. Everything works on the vehicle except for the air conditioning. Funny enough that 1991 was actually the last year in which the US air conditioning systems in vehicles was using R12. The following year in 1992, they moved over to R134. So a little bit of unfortunate luck there on my part, but with the windows down and just given the time of year approaching winter and getting a little bit cooler outside, it is nice to drive. I'll go ahead and move on to the other side and we'll show you the interior from the driver's side. Here also, just before I move on, is the only spot in the entire car in which it identifies as an LX. So, open up the door. This is the titanium, cloth, and vinyl interior, almost like a tweed material on the seats. And 1990 was the first year for the SRS system with the airbag. I do like the look of the wheels from '89 and earlier, almost a 2-spoke design. And for some reason, Ford could just not wrap their head around getting this airbag system on the steering wheel and also having it be a tilt column. So these are unfortunately just stuck columns. There's no tilt. You just have to adjust the seat to your liking. I did end up placing the door handles, the locks, as they were busted, and I ended up redoing the armrests for both the door panels as well as the center console, just because it was absolutely shredded. Whereas the newer pieces, it's just a solid piece of molded material. The prior stuff was a foam that had vinyl material stretched over it. So it rips and it tears and it just doesn't hold up as well. Moving on to the inside. Go ahead and turn the lights on. You'll hear the warning chime, which gets annoying, so I won't have it on for too long. But all of the lights work. It does have the deluxe radio with the cassette player. All of this interior is original. The door panels are, the dash, the AC vents, and the climate control. I haven't touched that and haven't had to, thankfully. One thing that I understand people have a big grievance about with these is the ashtray door, in which you'll open it, and it probably will be this way in this one too, just with messing with it. That once you decide that you're done ashing out your cigarette or just to look at it, you try to close it and it doesn't close the right way. Seems to be a huge issue with these, just given that all of this center console material is just plastic, and there's no little liner that kind of connects each pieces, or there's no rubber, so it all just creaks and squeaks, and that's just how they made them. So, but you want to go ahead and take out this ashtray right here, leave it off to the side somewhere, and unfortunately I don't have any way offhand to get a light in there, but there's a small metal prong that's sticking out one of the arms that actuates the door. Now, it might be the case for you, so that might fix your issue, but I tried pushing it up against the arm so that it sits almost flush with it. And that seems to fix my problem. If the arm is broken or busted in any way, then unfortunately you might just have to replace this entire piece. I've seen where a lot of people just decide to ditch the ashtray entirely. As I understand, smoking isn't as big as it used to be. And they do make aftermarket pieces that actually have 2 provisions for cup holders, which was another big grievance, that people ended up just using this spot right here, if you know, in between the e-brake and the bolster for the seat to use as a cup holder, and I've done it too. But that little arm, at least for me, works, where I can put the ashtray back and close the door, and it actually stays nice and flush, at least better than it was prior. So also too, the light in the glove box works, and it does have the little yellow button that's off to the side there for the automatic trunk release. Only works when the car's on, as it is electric. It's not a, say, vacuum operated one from an earlier time. So I do have the original owner's manual. It's not with me in the vehicle. It is with my binder that has all of my other receipts with all of the other work that I've done to it, as well as the warranty information booklet and the stereo speaker booklet, or the same little packet that comes with the others. So what I'll do now is I will go ahead and just jump cut to underneath the hood, and we'll talk about the engine. Okay, and with the hood open, that saves me some time. That way you don't have to see me mess with the prop rod and get it open and whatnot. I'm also going to go ahead and turn this on just for the sake of showing that it does work for the under hood light. I had a couple people at the car show ask me how long it took me to wire this in, but this is actually factory. You can't see it too well given the interference from the light bulb, but there is a small Ford logo that is on this piece. This is a factory piece. It does have the incorrect hood insulation. The factory style was a lot more beveled up against the inner side of the hood, and even had an embossed pony in the center. CJ Pony Parts, a aftermarket company for many Fox body Mustang parts and a variety of others, used to sell a reproduction, but they stopped, and I was unfortunate enough to not purchase one in the time that they did make that. So if anybody has a factory style Fox body Mustang hood installation and would like to sell it, please go ahead and message me down in the comments and we can exchange contact information. This is the motor. This is the 5.0 high output 302 cubic inch V8 that was actually part of the Windsor platform that ran from, I think, July of 1961 all the way until about December of 2000. Initially started off as just a small little 221 cubic inch V8, and then moving up in the Mustang, the first generation Mustang, to the 260 and 289, and then to the 302. So in 1986, the V8 saw the first year for electronic fuel injection given the EFI. And by 1991, this motor was rated at 225 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. In 1992, the horsepower and torque rating was the same. And then in 1993, Ford upset quite a number of people by switching the internals for the motor from forged to cast iron. And it lowered the overall horsepower rating from 225 to 205 horsepower. And I believe the pound-feet of torque went down from 300 to 285, 290, somewhere in that ballpark. My guess is they did that just for cost-effective reasons, being that cast was a little bit cheaper than making forged internals, and they were also trying to phase out, probably just to get ready for the new body style that would come the following year in 1994, the SN95. But like I said, this is the original motor to the vehicle, as well as the transmission, the automatic with overdrive, and the rear end is 273 gears. So it does have the original power steering pump, coolant reservoir, fan shroud, wiper fluid reservoir. One of the selling points, at least for me when I first found the vehicle, was the fact that it still had its original rubber boot that covers the distributor. A lot of times those are missing. It does also have the factory air intake. I did put a Canon air filter, but the only reason I went with that was, given that this was my car in high school, as with any other high school kid trying to pull up to the parking lot in the morning with the loudest and fastest car. So getting the K&N in there meant I was just a little bit quicker, maybe even 5 horsepower or so, but that was my mindset back then. And at least going forward, it's not affecting the overall appearance anyway. It's something that's on the inside. I did end up having to replace the plastic vacuum tree that's right here. I had the little almost plungered end for this rubber hose here for the brake booster break on me, and basically I lost all power brakes whatsoever. Super dangerous and totally not fun to drive in. You can see that I have all of the stickers, some of which are reproductions, others are originals, one of which being this reproduction sticker for the 1991 emissions controls, and this is specific to this year only. You can read down at the bottom here in the small font that says regulations applicable to 1991 with the wiring diagram there. I had to be very careful when cleaning this, and I've tried to do my best to preserve it as is by going around and polishing all the metal pieces individually, as well as using just a variety of used paintbrushes, toothbrushes, Q-tips, and at one point even using a metal coat hanger bent out into just a single wire with a piece of Mr. Clean magic eraser wrapped around it to try to clean the white paint that's on the firewall and the shock wall towers, and then going around and shining up and trying to freshen up all of the plastics and black hoses and electrical wires and all that. And I've even tried my best to clean all of the wires individually as best I can, that way you can see their individual color. But the motor does run very, very well. This motor has 178,000 miles on it. And it's still going after 31, 32 years. Another thing too is this throttle positioning sensor right here on top of the throttle body. A lot of the time I've seen that these are tampered with or drilled into just because people have issues with these. But this one is the original to my knowledge, and I have not had any issues with that. So we'll go ahead and move on to the trunk. All right, a couple pieces of information that I wanted to elaborate on just a little bit more before I move on to the trunk. We'll do this kind of quickly, is that all of the panels are original to the vehicle. Each one of them has the Ford VIN sticker that was done as a anti-theft method to be against, say, if panels were missing or taken apart and switched at chop shops. So all of the panels, the doors, have this sticker on there. It's a little hard to read, but you can make out the VIN that's on there. And also, too, one final thing to note about the interior, just for the time, and I'll move on to the trunk, is 1991 was the last year for this lower bolster here for your legs to be able to be pulled out. So that was the last year for that. 92 and 93, so this lower end of the seat was all one big piece. You could no longer get this. Okay, now onto the trunk. So I can get out the key. This is the original keys. You have the ignition key, and then for Fords you have this really large fat trunk and lock key. So the under deck lid light works. Again, I tried cleaning up as best as I could. The underside of this as well. All that is original paint as well, and then there's also that VIN sticker that's there. The taillight housings are original as well. I do have a car cover in here, and I also have the original parade boot cover. This is the dust cover that will go over the convertible top if the top is down. But the little Velcro top and even the factory instructions are there. And inside I have the four-way and the parade boot itself and a couple other small little items that are in there. Underneath this, I'll also do another cut here in a little bit to underneath the trunk mat, because it does have the original spare still with the car. But again, my goal again is just to clean it up as best as I could. I actually went ahead and clay barred, compounded, polished, and waxed the entire vehicle, so the paint is as smooth as it can be for what it is. The paint in this era was just not great. It's why you see a lot of the cars that have extreme clear coat fading or damage. I think they moved over to water-based stuff instead of thicker paints, and it shows, but this is not bad for the original. And just showing the lip here. And the rear bumper as well. We'll go ahead and move on to the spare tire. Okay, and with the trunk mat and the contents removed, I can go ahead and show this trunk floor well here and the spare tire. You can see, and my guess given that it was from California and didn't spend too much time out there enough to see any significant oxidation or rot rust, that the trunk floor is in really great shape. That the brushed on adhesive that's here and the wiring harness to the taillights. And the only damage is just that there's some moisture that got in at some point and just corroded away this little portion of the spare tire cover. But the jack and towage sticker is still intact. I'll go ahead and take this out. They do make reproductions of this piece, this cardboard little piece here, but it does not have these little black posts that kind of elevate it up and above the well so that it sits flush with the mat. They just sell the cardboard by itself, so go ahead and just put this on the pile. But it does have the original spare and tie down and scissor jack as well. All that is there. But just looking around, the trunk floor is in really good shape. And there is underneath, I believe, this cover, if I were to take off this panel here, there's an orange button that is the automatic fuel pump shut-off switch. In case this thing were to be rear-ended to a substantial speed, it triggers that button that shuts off the fuel pump so it isn't sending fuel to an engine if it happens to catch fire. And then it's just a orange button to press, and then it resets it and allows the fuel pump to work. Go ahead and move on. I do have a reproduction window sticker and a Marty report for this vehicle. Here is the deluxe Marty report that I got for the vehicle. Spent just a couple $100, sent in the VIN to martyauto.com, and they're able to decode the VIN, and they provide you with this sheet that goes over all of the individual letters in the sequence and numbers and tells you what they mean. And then also they did offer a reproduction of the factory window sticker. So I did get that. It was not something that I had when I purchased the vehicle. So looking at it, it goes over each of the options that it came with, and it even shows some of the statistics about how many of them were made. The most interesting one to note is that it was only one of 490 for the 1991 Mustang LX two-door convertible with the paint and trim codes. Now keep in mind, with 490 of them being produced and the fact that the convertible is not the most sought after body style, I would imagine that there probably are not too many of them for 1991 that fit the bill in terms of being as original or retaining their original paint, drivetrain, interior to the majority extent. Also, another thing too is on the report, it says at the bottom that was produced in September the 21st of 1990, 11 days behind schedule. And keep in mind that these were hand assembled, rolling down the assembly line, people working on them and putting them together. They were not perfect by any means when they were new. I'll go ahead and show you one little example here of an imperfection. And this is something that I found that I haven't messed with. It's just how it came. Is there's a tape line blowout right here where this front bumper meets up to the quarter panel on the driver's side, that the tape line blew out on the black bold trim, and so it actually got white paint on that. And I believe that there is, either on this side or the other side, I haven't seen it in a little while, just haven't looked at it, that there was actual runs in the paint down by the rocker. So I think to a certain extent we tend to romanticize these cars, you know, reliving the glory days, so to speak, and reminiscing about them. But there are certain times that I have seen cars in the past at shows in which I've talked to a number of owners that say that people have come up to their vehicle and say, "Oh, you ruined it." And upon asking why, they say that, well, the manufacturer never made the paint this good, or the body this straight. And so I guess there is something to be said about over-restoring. And the saying is true that it can only be original once. Looking back to the window sticker, you see that it actually gets pretty decent gas mileage for a V8 of the era, 18 in the city, 25 in the highway. And being that this was a convertible, this was on the higher end of the spectrum for price, coming out to a total $21,016 with all of the options that you got with power, mirrors, and door locks, and the radio with cassette player. I'll go ahead and just do a quick little zoom over some of the information. If you'd like, you can go ahead and pause the video and read through this at your own expense. And now I'll move on to starting it, and I'll let you hear it. It's gotten a little bit windy, so I've decided to just crack the garage door open, not opening it up all the way. But moving on to the inside, I got the key in the ignition. I'll go ahead and shut the door, that way you don't have to hear that. And we'll go ahead and start it up, and then we'll just do a quick walk around, and then I think we'll end it after that. Just as a final note, if you have any comments or questions regarding the vehicle, any of the information that I've talked about with this Mustang or my pickup truck, you can go ahead and leave them down in the comments section. Also too, I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Try to answer any questions you might also have about any of the products that I've used to clean and try to preserve what I have. So, this concludes my overview of my 1991 Ford Mustang. Thank you so much for watching and taking the time to do so if you did make it this far in the video. I will be posting more videos either on this or my 1972 Dodge G200 and whatever other classic car the near future brings.